Recording. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Before we get going with our speaker, Michael Koren, before we get going with him, I just have two quick announcements. First of all, there was lots of participation in our winter juried show. All of the submissions that you all put in are with our judge. We expect to get them back either tomorrow or Saturday. And once we get them, we'll be making announcements of which pieces were in the show. It's going to be a beautiful show. I've had the opportunity to look at some of the pieces. And as usual, the judge only sees the image, the size, the medium, does not see, price or the artist. Next quick announcement is we constantly, have shows on display at Glenview Mansion. Currently, there is an MAA, Montgomery Art Association show up. It's called Autumn Colors and Reflections. And that will be up until we switch out for our juried show. And it looks really nice. So if you have a chance to get over to the mansion, please do so. Enough of that. Let's go to Michael Koren. Excuse me, Michael. I'm tongue-tied. Michael has been with us in the past, and he's a favorite with many of our members. I personally have a love-hate relationship with my smartphone. I love it when I need to communicate with people quickly. I hate it when it changes my sentences and autocorrects. And the jury's out with me on the photography. I know it's powerful, but sometimes I get frustrated with that. And after Michael's talk today, I feel I'm going to be a little bit less frustrated. Michael is a freelance sports and event photographer. He was just talking to us about his recent trip to Paris, where he was doing street photography. He works professionally for photographing models, portfolios, and corporate portraits, product photography for catalogs and advertising campaigns. He also teaches over at Montgomery County and at the Capitol Photography Center. He is he's served as president, director, and educator and chair of the Silver Spring Camera Club. He's right now vice president of the Maryland Photography Alliance. He also has a job where he is a spreadsheet guru, and his title for the business he works for is Director of Business Intelligence, but he likes to call himself the voice of reason. And without further ado from me, Michael, thank you again. It's been 4 years since you were with us before, and in the past you've shared tricks with smartphones. You've talked to us about how to photograph our art. You've also shared your portfolio and some of your creations. All of it's been great, and I can't wait to hear from you today. So please take it away.
Well, good. Thank you, Pat. And thank you, Lisa, for inviting me again. I love seeing people. So you can mute your microphone, but feel free to not mute your camera. So please, I like to look at who I'm talking to, so it's all good. One other thing. So I love questions. So I like watching the people. I like hearing questions, seeing the questions, whatever they may be. If you're more comfortable typing the question in, just put it in the chat, and I'm going to ask Lisa or Pat or somebody to monitor that. And then don't be shy about jumping in and asking that question. I don't mind at all.
Fotógrafo está haciendo la información. ¿Cómo va a ser?
So you can mute your microphone, just not your camera. Okay, so thanks. So what we're going to do for the next, 4 hours or so, well, no, we can't do that. The Ravens are playing.
Some of us haven't had dinner yet. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So for the next 3 hours, we'll talk about iPhone photography. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some pictures. We're going to go over the camera and show you some tips on the camera, some editing, and then some pictures and some inspiration. And again, I love questions. Ask the question at any time. Don't worry about waiting for a break. I'll stop occasionally if that's more proper, if that's what you feel like you want to do, is wait for a break, but just ask the question. I really appreciate those. So here we go. And that's good. That's working. So I call my phone photography an artistic expression. So I am not a photographer. So in the past, the one correction that Pat's saying about the model portfolios and headshots and product photography, that was all the distant past. Now I'm doing the primarily when I'm shooting freelance, it's youth sports photography, and it's the team picture, not the action, because the action picture, nobody buys it, number one, because all of you have cameras and you're standing on the sidelines, and you take your own pictures. But what you can't do is the team picture. And I'm really good at taking team pictures. Not very glamorous, but I can do that. I can do it well. And that's what I've been doing. But on my, let's call it my artistic side, I use my phone cameras, primarily my camera. I do have we'll call it the big black camera. I do have a camera that's black and has a lens, and you can move dials and push buttons and do kinds of stuff like that. But my phone camera is my artistic camera. And I'm not the type of photographer from the old days of model portfolios and product photography of photographing what I see. I photograph what I feel. And that's what I hope that you get out of this. And that's kind of like what artists write. When you're doing a painting, you're not painting exactly what you see. If there's a trash can next to something that you're painting, you don't paint the trash can into your picture, I would hope. So just like that, I would not photograph the trash can sitting next to something that I'm photographing. So one of your inspirational quotes of the night, and this is one I love from Dorothy and Lang, is that the camera, maybe Pat, this will help you overcome some of your hate towards your camera as an artistic device, is it's an instrument that teaches you how to see when you're not using your camera. So it's that two-dimensional flattening, what the camera can do. It helps you translate that maybe onto a canvas or maybe just as the picture itself. So that's to me what the camera does. It's not exactly what I see, but it helps me understand what I'm seeing. And also, again, I'm taking pictures of what I feel. So we all know the phone has limitations. And that's a good portion of this love-hate relationship people have with their phone, because it has a limited lens selection, no real zoom. The aperture is fixed. Even if you don't know what an aperture is, trust me, it's fixed. You can't change it. The aperture changes how much light is coming through the lens. And for a photographer, that's something that's just hated. You can't stand that. And it has a very small sensor. So I look at these limitations. I choose to look at this on a positive light. There are advantages, because limitations create or foster creativity, because it's a problem, and it's something that you have to do. You have to overcome a problem. So find unique angles with your limited lens selection. Get closer, crop. That's all okay. Again, we're photographing not what we see, but what we feel, and it's okay to crop. Embrace that depth of field. That's that fixed aperture thing. So depth of field, non-photographers, means how much is in focus from the foreground to the background. So your subject is somewhere in between the foreground and the background. So if you have a bush that's on fire, and there's Moses in the foreground, and there's a mountain in the background, and you're photographing that bush, you either want Moses in focus, or you want the mountain in the background in focus, or you want everything in focus. That's what depth of field is. So the aperture helps decide what that is. So if you can't use, because it's fixed and you can't change it, there's software that changes it for you. Embrace it. And then small sensor, yes. Look for better light, or use the technology and the software that's built into your camera to help you gather more light. So recently, many weeks ago, we had the northern lights in this area, the aurora borealis. All of your social media pictures that you saw were likely taken with phones. People went outside with their dumb smartphone, pointed at the sky, and they saw pictures, or they took pictures that they couldn't even see with their naked eye, because the phone has an amazing ability of gathering light, even that small sensor. So the better light is almost a non-starter now, because you can handhold your phone and take pictures in very low light. The technology is there now, part of the software. So because it's being recorded, I'm going to run through the slide. I'm not going to read everything to you. And this is where I'm going to pick up my phone and demonstrate a few things about how to use your phone to the maximum ability so you can take better pictures. So better pictures means sharp, good focus, good exposure, good composition. If you lack any one of those, you're not getting a great picture. You can have blurry pictures. That's called intentional motion. But if you have a blurry picture because it's blurry, it's not a good picture. So there is a difference in that. So not every mess on a canvas is a Monet, right? There's certain ones that just look better than others. So you just have to make sure that you have your blurry where it needs to be blurry. So again, you tap the screen, you do some swiping to adjust things. Long tap to lock focus and exposure. I'll just show you that real quick. But I do recommend, and this is kind of like settings that you should always have on your camera, is the flash is never auto, it's always off. Leave the flash off. It's unnecessary today with the technology that the phones have. You really don't need your flash. Flash is great for reading a menu in the restaurant. It's great for walking down dark steps. Don't use your flash for photography. Use it for a flashlight. There's an HDR feature buried in the settings. Leave it on auto. If you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter. Just don't go changing it. Don't change it over to manual. Leave it on auto. Live mode, if you have an iPhone, I leave that on. I like taking 3 seconds of pictures and being able to choose one of those three. And also with an iPhone, you can take those 3 seconds and combine it into one picture and get a long exposure, which is a great feature. Turn on a grid. I'll show you that on my phone in a moment. And then there's panoramic pictures, and I'm going to show you those later. And then one of the things, and most people know this by now, but it's often forgotten, is the volume key when you're in your camera app works as a shutter release. Now, a shutter release is that big white button at the bottom of your screen. That's what you tap to take your picture. Well, your thumb can take a picture just by tapping the volume key.
On the phone says set HDR to auto.
Yep, set HDR to auto. So use the volume key as your shutter release. So even if you're taking a selfie or something like that, you would use your thumb as a shutter release. So let me go and share my screen on my phone. All right. We have confirmed it's 7:15. So on my phone screen, and I'm using an Apple device. So what I'm going to show you is very similar to whether it's an Apple or an Android. I don't necessarily, it doesn't really matter which one you have at all. It is what it is. Actually, I'm going to close this and restart it so we start fresh. There we go. So one thing I mentioned is my flash is off. And the flash, just a real quick tour, at the top left of almost every iPhone or Android screen is your flash control. And right now it's off, and we kind of intuitively know it's off because there's a slash through it. And if I tap it, then what happens is you think the flash is on, and it's not. It's on maybe, meaning auto. Maybe is auto, and maybes are really bad when it comes to photography. So in order to flash to be, we have 3 choices. We tap this little icon at the top center, and then we have a flash icon at the bottom. And now we have our 3 options. We have on, off, and those are the only 2 options that really mean anything. And then you have maybe. And that's terrible, because if you're in a museum and you're not allowed to use your flash, or if you're in an area where sensitive, maybe you're in church, or you're in a religious place, or whatever, you just don't want your flash on for any reason. Auto is not a good way to go about things, because if it's dark, then the flash is going to come on because it thinks it needs to be on. So we choose either on, off, or on or off. And I choose off, and now it's off. We have a slash through it, and it's off. But if I had chosen on, I know it's on because this is yellow. And this is true with an iPhone. Color codes it that it means that the flash is on. So if I tap it it goes to off. And if I tap it again, it's on maybe. So gray is maybe, and then you must, if you want it on, you turn it on. But we're going to leave it off. The grid, so I have this on my screen so that if you know you're off center, it helps you identify if you're just slightly off center, if your horizon line is not centered. It's okay to have a horizon line that's off center, as long as you mean it. So if it's like this and it's off just ever so slightly, if you're taking a picture of the ocean or a lake and it's running downhill one way or the other, it doesn't look natural. You can do it like this and do it like you mean it as far as composition. But if you have it all, if it's level, this helps you identify that you're shooting your picture on a level because you have a grid here. So the grid helps you line up your verticals and your horizontals. It also, for those of you that may consider yourself an artist, it also is a rule of thirds grid. So meaning that if you place your subject somewhere on this rule of thirds, on either on the axis or at the intersection, generally it becomes a stronger photograph, better composition. So if I want to take a picture of this HP symbol, I'm not just going to put that right in the center of my frame. It's boring. I would probably move it over this way. So if this was a head, a portrait, you don't put the portrait, the face of the person right in the middle of the frame. Generally, you have it off center, top, something along those lines. And that's more of like as you're looking at environmental portraits, you look at more formal portraits, you always see the eyes and the head is usually at the top of the screen or very far at the bottom of the screen. It's never, never, never just flat center. Live mode, this is on because it's yellow. We know it's yellow. And what that does, it takes a photograph for 3 seconds. And then the nice thing about it is, let me just going to find one for you. Live photo, and here's why we do this. So here's a picture. And if I press it, this is the 3 seconds of time that was flowing. That's all great, wonderful. But the nice thing is I can edit this photograph and then I can choose which one of these frames that I want. And one of these water splashes is probably better than another. If I had the patience to look at every one, I could decide that. But let's take it in a different direction. Maybe this is a picture of a person that you care about. And this is a road and there's a car. And the car is entering their ear. You could scrub along so that the car ends up behind them and it's not in their ear. So let me just go find you a different picture that may have something along those lines. Oh, here we go. Yes. So here's a really bad picture. I snapped the picture, but this is the 3 seconds of time, right? So if I go here and I edit this picture, I take that really bad picture and I find, whoop, there's the one that's the magic picture. Now I can see the books on the send. She's walking in. She's got the red beret, so it's perfect. There's Emily in Paris walking into my scene, just like that. And I can get that. And then if I'm going to do this, what I would do is I'm just going to crop because actually, you have to do this first. Got to save it. A key photo. Now I'm going to crop it. And that person's elbow is not the subject of my photograph. Cut that out. Don't need it. And I don't need that white area over here either because that's a distraction. And there, that would be my photograph. And I'm done. Just like that. And this is just really quick cropping and taking the photograph from what it was, this mess, to that. Very quick and easy, and that's why live photo is just really wonderful. Android phones have it also, and it's called motion photo, I believe, for the Android version of that. Back to the camera.
Michael, if I can interrupt, you were showing us the grid. What button turns that on?
Good question. And it's never an interruption. So you go to your settings. This is in your phone. This is different for an iPhone. So the setting for your grid is in the camera setting, and you scroll down and there's something called grid right here to turn it on right there. You also have a level. On an Android device, the setting for the grid is within the camera settings. not the settings of the phone or the settings of the camera. Apple and Android are a little bit different in that regard. So the other thing that I really wanted to show you is I mentioned you're going to tap on the screen. So if I'm holding this, if I tap on the screen, actually, no, let's do, oh, I don't have one. That's fine. So if I tap on the screen on, let's say the letter 0 or letter O, the letter O, then the HP symbol back here goes out of focus. And if I tap on the HP symbol, the letter O is out of focus. Maybe it's hard to see on a smaller screen, but trust me, it's out of focus. So these type, and you can enhance it actually just by getting a little bit closer. Now the HP symbol is more out of focus, and now if I focus on that, the other is out of focus. So really, you can see that, and if I go back and forth here between the foreground and the background, you can see how it's changing focus. It's wherever you tap, that's the focus point. Also, wherever you tap, and this is where I just need to stop sharing just for a moment to load a blank screen. Any questions while we're waiting?
So the grid symbol, if I've got that turned on, it'll show up automatically on my iPhone.
Yes.
Because I must not have that turned on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to see depending on the lighting. So it is faint. It is faint. So I put up a white background here just to illustrate another point. So if I tap, remember I'm tapping and I'm setting the focus. And if I tap back here, I'm setting the focus, but it's also changing the exposure. So wherever you tap is two things, focus and exposure. Focus and exposure. So if you want this focus, but you want this exposure, you swipe. So you see there's a little sun icon. So you tap where you want it focused. There's a sun icon here. And I take my finger and I can swipe up or I can swipe down. And now I'm changing my exposure, but I'm not changing the focus. So similar, I'm going to tap on the background here. It makes everything too bright. And then I can change my exposure to make it darker. I can change my exposure to make it much, much lighter. And all I'm doing is swiping my finger here, right next to that sun icon. So if I tap, swipe, you're changing exposure. Focus remains where it is.
Interesting.
So that will change your photography. That will make you a better photographer right off the bat because you're doing two things. Number one, you're making sure that what you want as your subject, and there's another reason the grid is here and tapping on your screen really helps. It identifies what you're taking a picture of. So if you have if you say, I love this HP symbol, I'm really taking a picture of this HP symbol. And we tap on the HP symbol, then you look at it and you're thinking, is all this back here really important? Kind of like that picture I just showed you of Emily Paris walking into my frame. On the left side was not important, so I crop it out. Well, here, before cropping it, I may just want to move closer because I can. So rather than zooming with the camera and lens, I'm just going to move my phone camera closer and take that picture and get what I want in the picture. If I have to crop later, then I still have to crop later. That's okay. But at least I'm moving closer. So I'm identifying what I want. So when you're tapping on your screen, what you're doing is you're identifying your subject. You're making sure that the subject that you've identified is sharp and focused, and you're identifying where the exposure is supposed to be. But now you have an option of changing that exposure to make it correct according to what you want it to be. Then you can take your picture. So doing any of the steps and not doing any one of those steps, you're sacrificing quality in your photography. Every photograph, you have to identify your subject, you have to set your focus, and you have to set your exposure. And this is something you always did when you had a different, old days, you had a camera. Even if it was a camera that you didn't have to focus, you were pointing at something, the focus was preset. Like an Instamatic camera where you didn't have to think about it. Sometimes you had a little range thing, you put it on the mountain, you put it on the flower, you put it on the person. You were setting a focus zone. So here you're doing the same thing. All you're doing is setting your focus, setting your exposure, and now you're allowed to take your picture. It's the best way to do it. Let's see, what else? You have numbers at the bottom of your screen. These are your lenses. And if you see, I'm going to hold my phone up to where my head is. I don't know. Anyway, I have 3 lenses on my camera. So if you have 3 lenses, you may have 4 numbers. If you have 1 lens, pretty much have 1 number. But the number is the actual lens that's on your camera, on the outside of your camera. So if you have 3 lenses, you get number 1, you get number 2, and 5. Maybe your 5 is a 3. It doesn't matter. You have 3 lenses if you have 3 holes on the front of your camera. If you have 2 lenses, you get 2 numbers, generally, sometimes 3 numbers. The 0.5 is your wide angle lens. It takes a whole lot. It's a very wide angle lens. And their 1 is the normal lens. 2 is 2 times magnification, and 5 is 5 times magnification. It's not a zoom. I called it a magnification. It's not a zoom, because zoom is this when you're pinching and zooming. So if I have a number, if my normal number is a 1, for example, a 1 is my normal number. Anything between 1 and 2 is digital zoom. Like, in other words, it's just enlarging pixels. It's not using the number 2 lens. So if I'm doing this, 1.9, I'm destroying the quality of my photograph, because you might as well just go to 2. It's not much bigger, but at least you're using the lens that was given to you, that Steve Jobs allowed you to have. So you have that lens on the end of your camera. Just use it. Use the 1, use the 2, use the 5, 3, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. Use those. If you're pinching and zooming and going anywhere in between, all you're doing is magnifying the lowest number that you had in between, and you're reducing the quality of your photograph. So if you remember way back earlier days when Betamax and VHS was fighting it out, you had digital zoom on the video cameras. Digital zoom is nothing more than just enlarging the pixels on the sensor. This is the exact same thing. So even though you can go up to 25, doesn't mean anything. It's just digital zoom, and it's going to be very blurry and very pixelated. It's kind of like that picture, that old-timey picture of the Loch Ness Monster. That's what all your pictures are going to look like. So I just recommend using the 1, the 2, or the 5, 3, whatever the numbers are at the bottom of your screen. And then last thing I'll show you is the panoramic feature on your phone. On an iPhone is unique, is that when you go into panoramic mode, you have an arrow on your screen, and you must follow along that arrow. You must. And it says, move your iPhone continuously when taking a panoramic. So you start on one side and you move in that direction. But what if you want to start on the right side and move towards the left? A lot of people, I know many of you are muted, you're probably screaming at the screen. You're saying, well, just turn your camera upside down. But you can do that. That works. But you're going to drop your camera, I guarantee it. Especially, most panoramics are taken at a really high, climbed up so long flight of steps. You're standing at the highest elevation. You're breathing heavily. You turn your phone upside down, and you're going to drop it. So don't do that. Tap on the arrow. It jumps to the other side of the screen. That's simple. Now I can start here, then I can move my way over to that side. And the reason you do this, just sometimes the scene is better from the right to left versus left to right. Like, maybe there's a little kid that's screaming on the right side over here, and you want to kind of push them out of the way so you can get over there. So you do that, start there. Or you know that somebody's about to walk into the frame, so maybe you start on this side, start, and then by the time they walk in, you're already over here, right? So they've already passed through this area, and it doesn't matter, and you're over there. So there's reasons you want to start from one side or the other. The other thing is you can take panoramics that are vertical. So you can move your phone up and down to get large buildings or trees or whatever that may be. All you have to do is just turn your phone 90 degrees. Let's see. Anything in the chat or any other questions?
Michael, I had a quick one, not
Yep.
not on Pano, but on the zooming, the pixelates versus using your lenses. My my phone only has 2 lenses. I've got an older one. You have 3.
Uh-huh.
Let's say I wanted to get something close and I have the best zoom lens that my phone comes with. I would be better off taking it without moving my fingers back and forth to do it on the screen and then later crop, right?
Correct. And the reason is when you take the picture without using the digital zoom, it's sharpening smaller pixels. So the phone is already going to do some post-processing magic. We'll just call it magic. We're not going to delve into what it's really doing. So it's magic the magic is sharpening the smaller pixels that are there. So if you're enlarging the pixels and you try to sharpen enlarged pixels, that now those enlarged pixels are now blurrier than the previous pixels, you're just sharpening blurry pixels. It's better to sharpen sharp pixels and then crop later, and you're going to get a better picture.
So basically, you should never use your hand to, opening your fingers to make it look like it's zooming in, because you're just ruining the quality. You're better off doing it later if you have to do it at all.
Well, yeah, yes, yes. However, it's important to understand the optics of a lens is that when you're magnifying more, things that are in the background, in the foreground, appear to move closer together to be on the same plane. And a wide angle lens pushes everything out. So if you're standing in front of a boulder and there's a mountain in the background, the boulder's going to, with your wide angle lens or your normal lens, it'll look like that boulder is right in front of you and the mountain is miles away. But if you step back 5 feet using a telephoto lens and take a picture of that boulder and the mountain, they'll look like they're much closer together on the same plane. Maybe not the same, but very similar. It compresses, so the telephoto lens compresses. And if there's an artistic reason to compress your picture for any number of reasons, like, especially in portraiture or some landscape photography, then you are better off actually compressing the picture by enlarging, using the telephoto portion of your lens to compress the foreground and the background. So that's the only reason to do it. Other than that, you should just tap on the screen and use the lenses that you have available to you. Okay. Back to our regularly scheduled program. And I'm still going to have the phone handy because why not, right? So the camera, your camera's always with you, right? The best camera you have is the one you have with you. So it's the everything. I call it the everything camera. So these are some of the examples of some pictures that I'm going to go through that helps you. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show some examples of some pictures and then show some examples of edited pictures. And then I'm going to go through a real quick editing process of a picture that I shot like a week ago. But basically that long exposure feature where you can do it in an app, or you can do it built into an iPhone. On an Android, you need an app to do it. But essentially, it's taking 3 seconds of exposure. This is the normal. And then it's taking 3 seconds of flowing water to get a 3-second long exposure. And the sharp areas are sharp because they're not moving. And it's only the water that's moving. And that's called live mode. So basically, I have this scene, put the camera in live mode. And what happens is it just takes that. Let me go backwards. You take your picture in live mode. So a phone camera and your big black camera are very, very different. When you're using let's call it the big black camera, you raise your hand and make a declaration and say, I am taking a long exposure photograph. And everybody around you goes, ooh, and you put your camera on the tripod and you push the button and everybody's still for the 5 seconds. And then they look at the back of your camera and go, ooh, ah. But when you're using an iPhone or an Android, when you're using live mode, you're not making the proclamation. You are by default always doing a long exposure photograph because you're in live mode. So what you're doing is taking a picture, and this is your still picture that it takes. But then you have an option with live mode is there's a drop-down menu and you choose long exposure and it takes that picture here and becomes this. That's exactly what I did for this picture here. So I didn't make the proclamation. I just took my picture and then I always use live mode because I showed you that earlier. because I have an option of being able to do this. I can do it on an iPhone. On an Android, you need a different app to do that. But on an iPhone, it's there and it's all ready for you. All you have to do is hold still. It's really all you have to do. So panoramic, this is, I would say, a non-traditional panoramic, meaning I didn't climb to the highest place. I just found something that was really interesting. And I just used a panoramic to go across the front of this train tunnel without having to go back really far to get everything in it. So using the panoramic substitutes as a wide angle lens without having to get everything that's not important in the photograph, top, bottom, and just using the panoramic to take the front of the picture. And again, you can take vertical panoramics, get yourself in the picture, scroll up, and then again, if you see it, this is just an example of a tree, but again, if you want to take a picture of the entire tree, you stand just a few feet away of it and take a panoramic up. It works on the Eiffel Tower, for example. Any large building you may be standing in front of, just use your panoramic going up and down. It works wonderfully. Don't forget vertical. Your iPhone and your Android have an amazing close focus ability. I was showing you that earlier with the HP symbol on my laptop. The HP symbol is about half an inch tall in real life, what I was showing you earlier. I can get very, very, very close to it. This tiny little bug was probably about an inch tall, an inch large, and you just get really, really close, take the picture. Because it's an iPhone, nobody gets afraid, nobody runs away. If you have the big black camera and you're putting a lens and all the big stuff, it casts its own shadow. It's no good. So that's why the phone is so wonderful for doing that. That HDR, I said don't turn it off because what it does, and your phone does this automatically. This is an older picture, meaning this is when the phone didn't do it so well. So I had an extra app that did it. But now the phone just does amazing things. So what it does, it takes an overexposed picture, an underexposed picture, and it stitches it together for you so that you get this great dynamic range. That's the high dynamic range. So you see the detail in the shadows, detail in the highlights, all in one picture. And this is only what a smartphone can do. Big black camera.
Where do you find that HDR setting on your iPhone?
It's automatic. It's already set. Steve Jobs said it right before he left us. Just don't, what I'm saying is don't look for it. Don't turn it off. Just leave it alone because that's how you get these great pictures. So other camera apps, and these are apps that I don't use one of them because I don't have an Android, but Open Camera is a really great app if you're using an Android. And if you want a lot of control, I'm going to say, oops, wrong way. If you want a lot of control of your photography, meaning setting your shutter speed manually, setting your focus manually by dialing in the focus rather than tapping on the screen. You want to set your white balance manually. Camera Plus 2, Lightroom Mobile, ProShot, and Open Camera. Those four will do it. Will help you do that. It'll allow you to set things manually. If you're that type of photographer. If you're not, just use the built-in camera app. I use the built-in camera app, I would say 95% of the time, and only occasionally do I go outside that and use these other cameras.
How can you adjust white balance without using these apps on your iPhone, like a 15?
You can't. That's why you would need an additional one of these four apps to do that. So you can only adjust white balance after the fact if you're shooting RAW on an iPhone, and that's going into the deep dark rabbit hole we shouldn't be talking about. Visco is a great app if you like filters. So if you get a lot of joy at putting filters on your photographs, Visco for Android and Apple will be your friend. It has a lot of nice special effects features built in also. So here's your second inspirational quote of the evening. Chosen artist. So the editing apps that I used to have a whole lot of apps on my phone, and now I pared it down to pretty much maybe 6, probably 4 that I actually use like all the time. So I use Snapseed. Virtually almost every photograph runs through Snapseed. Every photograph, I said almost every photograph goes through Snapseed. Every photograph goes through Lightroom Mobile. because I use Lightroom as a cataloging software that backs up my photographs also. So I don't use Apple's cloud service. I use the Lightroom Adobe service. Because I'm already paying for it, I get Lightroom Mobile as part of my subscription. So it's $10 a month for the rest of your life. It's kind of like a cable subscription or a cell phone subscription. Just get used to it. It's $10 a month for the rest of your life. And every photo goes through there because it gets archived. That's how I archive my photos. Touch retouch, I use it occasionally just to remove things that you can't remove in the field. So in other words, if there's a soda bottle in the grass and you can't take it out because you just can't go close enough to get there, or there's a trash can and you can't move the trash can, this can remove the trash can for you. Because again, I'm creating art. It's not photojournalism. I'm not doing documentary photography. I'm doing art. I want to take pictures of what I feel, not what I see. Artista oil will give you an artistic effect, like gives you oil painting effect, things like that. And spectral art, I use a lot, not a lot anymore. I used to use a lot. What it does, it gives you kind of like an electric look to your picture. It looks like it's glowing with electricity, or sometimes some people say it looks like it has a little soft webbing around it. It's a really nice looking app, and I'll show you a few examples of that perhaps.
Could you tell us, oh, what you use Snapseed for? Okay.
Yep, this is what I use Snapseed for. Good question. And I'm going to demonstrate Snapseed in a few moments just because it's that much fun. So it does everything. So everything that's here, again, it's being recorded. I don't have to read it to you. You can read it yourself. Snapseed does everything. Touch retouch, it removes stuff that you just can't remove. Like if this light pole is here and I can't go chopping it down, I want to take this picture, I just highlight it in touch retouch and voila, it goes away. It's that easy. Superimpose or image blender, they're similar. Image Blender is a much easier app to learn. There's a very, very, very slight learning curve, and this one has a very, very, very steep learning curve. So yeah, I would suggest Image Blender if you have that, if it's available to you. I think this might be iPhone only, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know Superimpose is available for everybody. So all it does is it blends two pictures together. And I'm going to show you some examples of that, of blending images together. So that's really the beautiful thing about these two. You can be very, very creative by taking two pictures of something and creating something from those pictures. And those JCPix apps, they have 28 mobile apps, but they also run apps for Mac or PC. So you can buy them as standalone apps, or if you're using Photoshop or Lightroom, they bolt onto those so that within Lightroom or Photoshop, you can open a JCPix app, or again, as I said, you can open a JCPix app independent on your Mac or PC and get the same special effects you get on your phone or tablet. They're a really good company, and they don't send you a lot of spammy emails. At the end of every year, they usually run really good sales and often give away some apps for free. So it may be worth going to their website, signing up for their newsletter, and they only send a newsletter like twice a year. So sometimes in July, sometimes, and then at the end of the year in December. And then Lightroom Mobile, again, it requires a subscription. You get cloud storage, and you get syncing with your Lightroom software. So if you're using Lightroom with a subscription on your desktop and you're using the storage, you get that as part of your subscription. If not, you still get editing, you still get ratings, you still get a camera built into this app. It does a lot of editing. It's a great app for editing. So, questions?
If you have two photographs of a person and they're almost identical, but one has their eyes closed and one has them open, what kind of app would you use to put the open eyes on the photograph you prefer?
So I don't use an app to put eyes on people. That's why I use live photo all the time. Because within those 3 seconds.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Okay.
So basically, so for everybody else, within 3 seconds, somebody's likely to be looking at you. Even a cat. They're within 3 seconds, the cat's going to look at you. All right, so before and after pictures, and these are just, some of these are composition related. So, and again, take pictures of what I feel, not what I see. So this is what you see. You see this crummy looking room. I say crummy looking. It's not such a crummy looking room, but all the other stuff up here is kind of crummy looking. You don't want this in your picture. And if you're going somewhere and you want to show somebody your wonderful pictures, you don't show them something that looks like this, because the lights are not important. The picture over here is not important. The eye in the sky is not important. The label on the wall is not important to the photograph. What's important is the moment that this young lady's having with this painting. So I was struck by that. And if I walk into the room to get closer, which I can't do because I would destroy the scene, right? So you walk into the room, then you're affecting the outcome. Next thing you know, it's not the picture that you saw. And if I can't get any closer with my lens on my camera because I'm at the max on the telephoto, you take the picture and then crop. So all I did was crop out all the stuff that's not necessary, and I used touch retouch to remove the black on the wall that's not important to the picture, and this is all that remains, and I lightened it up a little bit. It's that simple.
So will you address how to take the best photo of that painting?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, to be very honest, I'm trying to figure out whether I can apply what you're teaching tonight to photographing my own art.
I will not be teaching that tonight.
Okay.
Because, well, I am and I'm not. If you're photographing anything, you have to make sure it's in focus. So you have to tap on the screen to make sure it's in focus. And you have to adjust the exposure to make sure the representation of a painting or a picture or drawing, whatever you're taking the photograph of, matches the exposure that you see on your screen. And then composition is just lining it up. And I gave this talk earlier, probably Lisa can dredge it out of the archives, is you want to be center to the picture. Don't be off center, because then you're going to get distortion, as you would expect. Like if you take a picture of a building and you're at the bottom looking up at the top, it has this trapezoidal effect, and that's not what you want. So you want to be center to your picture when you do that.
I understand. And the grid is very helpful too.
Yep, the grid helps you make sure you're level. Yeah. So before and after, this is just editing. So this, you can actually see my phone in the picture here, right? It's not interesting. My phone is not that interesting. And the other, I just thought, so I was in Paris. I saw Remy. You got to take a picture of Remy. He was not cooking at the moment, so I just took that picture. Again, it's the editing, right? Darkening the areas that are just not important. Everything back here, it adds a little bit of texture to the edge of my phone. I can leave that in. I'm not so concerned about that, but it's not important enough to be discernible. So I just darken the entire picture because it's overexposed here. It's just a bad picture. And it was taken through glass. So that also contributes to the bad picture-ness of it. So that's why it needs a little bit of an edit. This, basically your phone works really well by laying it down on the grass. If you like taking pictures of flowers, let the autofocus do its magic, take the picture, put it on a timer, let's say 3 seconds, lay it down on the grass, let the autofocus work. And then all you need to do for an edit is brighten the colors. And one thing I did do here, and I'm really picky about this in a lot of my photographs, is making sure the edges have nothing in them. So I crop that out. So that's not important. This little tree, this little line, not important. And it's not, so therefore it gets cut out. New York, but it's just funny to see a pigeon walking in the bus lane. So you take the picture. And when you take the picture, it's coming out of your pocket when you're taking the picture, and it's crooked. And the yellow cab is not important to this picture, so we crop it out and sharpen it. This was taken last week. The color picture is okay. It's kind of washed out. I don't like it very much. And just all I did really was crop it a little bit and then convert it to black and white as an edit. And this is in Snapseed. It's super easy. And this is what I was Image Blender, where you're combining images, 2 different images together to produce one image. So if you're having lunch in a restaurant that has one of those aquariums, you get to choose your fish. Then you take a picture of the wall when you're walking in the restaurant, and then you blend them together to get something a little bit funnier than just taking a picture of a fish wall. And again, same thing here, just blending 2 images together to get another image. They were taken years apart. You just go through your library occasionally and you say, oh, this is funny just to do that. Editing for mood. So in other words, you take it, you make it darker, you make it more sinister, remove the label on the back of the guy. It's not important. Those type of things. This is what that app called Spectral Art that makes it look like kind of electric. So first I went into Touch Retouch to remove the poles because they're not important. I kind of removed the Pepsi also because that's not important. And then went into the Spectral Art to give it that electric look to it. This is everybody, very many people go to the Cherry Blossom Festival in DC. And this is during the festival. And when you take the picture with your lens, the normal lens, it is by default a wide angle lens. And what happens is verticals, this is where you have to be really careful with your pictures of art, that things that are on the edge will tend to collapse towards the center if you're using a wide angle lens. So using Snapseed, you can fix that. Just straighten them up a little bit. Color, contrast, saturation, make it a little bit better picture. So this is not cherry blossoms. These are magnolias that are in the garden near the castle. This is using my panoramic camera. So I wanted to be close. I didn't want to have to use a wide angle. I didn't need all the mess that's on the side. So the goal was just take the panoramic camera and then run it through a whole lot of different apps to create this. So the apps that I showed you are my favorites. I have others on my phone that I use occasionally just to create more artistic stuff, but this is one of the ones I like that is more artistic. And again, this is just Snapseed to make it more sinister, darker. Here, just a kind of flat picture. So the composition is good. Put the phone down on the ground, shoot up at the chair, make it look sinister, but then make it moody. This is another image blender, and I have this entire series now where I take pictures of a map where I am, and then I take a picture where the map is. And then I just blend them together. So whatever, the map is here, and the map was right in front of me. And then basically I just blend this together. I have this whole series. It's one of my more favorite ones that I like. But basically it just transforms what your, the whole concept of like travel photography and things like that. This is using a different camera app where I could set the shutter speed, and you can't set the shutter speed on the native app on your phone. So if you want, say, an 8-second exposure, this is the app that gives you an 8-second exposure. It's called Slow Shutter. And then just pan along with the bicycles, edit for color, contrast, saturation, and a little bit of cropping. This is using an oil painting effect. Museum American Indian, shot into the sun on purpose, and then just apply the image for the oil painting. Another oil painting, this is a watercolor effect app, and I think it's called Brushstroke, and you can add your signature too if you choose. This is an app called Circular that produces a tiny planet look. So I'm using my iPhone panoramic feature to get everything, and then basically it just wraps it up and makes it into a tiny little planet, and then run it through some other apps to get it kind of like a sparkly ball. This is an app called Kaleidocam, because it makes your phone a kaleidoscope. It's just fun. Don't have every picture in your portfolio one of these, but it can be fun to use occasionally. This is another one, Kaleidocam, where I accidentally took a picture. This is at a class I was teaching, and I was showing somebody how to take a picture by press here. I pressed accidentally, and then I put it in the app just to see what would happen. That's art, right? You say, what would happen if ... and then you do something. So that's the creative part of that. So I created something out of nothing, really. And then this is my kind of logo picture. But this is the original, and this is what I got out of it. And I'm not going to show you all the steps in between because it doesn't matter. But basically, I knew when I took this picture that I had to have that eye sharp, and I wanted some blur in the background, and then I created this. It was all an accident because I didn't know where I was going when it ended. Inspiration exists for us to find you working. There's the last thing. So what I'm going to do is edit the picture. We good on time, Pat and Lisa? We good?
Yeah, we're good on time. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to open Snapseed. So I'm going to do a really quick edit just to show you the power of, and I'm not going to show you every feature. I can't show you every feature in Snapseed. Not that I'm being mean and I won't show you. I can't show you every feature because it's that deep of an app. But basically, start here. I'm going to open from my device, but in this case, I'm going to go to my, oh my goodness, where'd it go? My favorites, because I had one that I'm going to create as a favorite. So I took this very boring picture, intentionally a boring picture, because I knew I was going to do a demonstration. And I'm going to use this picture. So this is my boring picture of an interior of a church in Paris. When I say it's intentionally boring, it really is. It's just a picture. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't do anything. So what I'm going to do first is things that I'll let you know, things that drive me crazy is this horizon line is not level. And I was standing at an angle. So I could have, if I had centered myself with this column here, I probably would have had a straighter horizon line, but I'm looking at it from an angle, so I'm not going to get, it's not as straight as I would like it to be. So within the tools of Snapseed, there's 28 tools. There are a lot of tools, and the tools have tools within the tools. So I'm going to go to the perspective tool, and this is where I can fix the up and down. In other words, I can straighten out the build. In other words, it was looking like it was falling over. I can straighten it out so it doesn't look like it's falling over. And then also I can rotate around to make it look like I'm straight onto it. So kind of like that. So now it's much better. We're getting there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it and fix a little bit of it. So I'm going to fix that rotation right about there. But one thing is, if you look at the bottom, I have to do this with two hands, see if I can do this. If you look at the bottom of my screen here, the bottom right, that's where it would normally crop. And then up here, it's where it normally would crop because I did a little bit of rotation. This app is so magical, it'll fill it in for you. So if I started with 12 million pixels, I'm ending with 12 million. But if I do rotation the other way, like the traditional way, you're trimming your picture. So you go from 12 maybe down to 10 and a half or 11. So those type of things just drive me crazy. So I made it a little bit better. These windows are nice, but they're not important. Like they're cut off, so they're not important to the pictures. I might leave them. I may crop that a little bit. But what I want to do is, and I couldn't do this, I want to turn these lights on. So what I want to do is these lights are, they're off. They're boring. I don't want to turn them on. So what I'm going to do is I will have to accept that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my image. I can make it lighter and darker. I'm going to make it darker. I want it dark in the interior and add some ambiance, whatever that means. So ambiance is kind of like texture in the shadows. And then we do have a shadow slider on this, and I can add shadows, or I can make the shadows darker. So I'm going to make the shadows a little bit darker, but I like that ambiance. Add some ambiance and then some warmth, just because why not? These lights are going to be casting a warm glow, and now all of a sudden everything looks better. Let's see the highlights. Let's bring out the highlights a little bit more and boost the contrast. And that's good. So this is what we started with. This is where we are so far. That's horrible. Now we're getting better. And I mentioned I want to turn on these lights. So let's work on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a brush. And I'm going to use an exposure brush. I'm going to zoom in. And this is truly zooming, right? I'm just like kind of magnifying that area. So I can put some light on these globes. So by using my finger, I'm going to paint with my finger and make them brighter. Just like that. And then I'm going to move over to the next one and make that brighter. And if I go outside the lines, that's okay.
I love how you did that and the etching didn't disappear. Is that normal, or were you on a more opaque paintbrush? I'm not less opaque paintbrush setting.
Yeah, all I'm doing is adding lightness to it. So the etching is still there because it has some detail there. And if I keep adding lightness to it, I can make that etching almost
It
go
would
away.
start. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, so yeah, I didn't like that was 0.7. Let's just keep going on that. And again, if I go outside the lines, I don't care. And I can check if I went outside the lines, and maybe I want to erase a little bit right here. So I'm going to erase that. Then I'm going to move over back to where I was before. I'm going to lighten that. Oops, wrong. I erased. So there, and I think there was more than one. That was it. There was two globes that I could see. We're going to turn those lights on. And we're going to accept that. So now they're brighter. It's getting there. It's not exactly what I want. So what I can also do is I can select the color of the globe by putting a little control point on it. I can set the area of influence here, and I can make it much brighter that way and add some contrast. But I kind of like doing that because it makes it really look like it's glowing. And then I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to copy this one and move over to the other one if I can find it. There it is. And paste that setting on that one. And I have to do it. I didn't have to do it all over again. And this is, and if I pinch and zoom, that's the area of influence. So I'm only affecting the white, that color, the white of that light. And now I can look at my picture and say, okay, that looks better. I can make the little things, they're a little bright, but here's what we're going to do. Tools, brush, and we had a warmth, the temperature. We're going to make sure that's really nice and warm. And we're going to paint more yellow on this to make it warmer. And the more you paint, like basically rubbing your finger on it, the more yellow it gets. And or I can make it blue, but I'm not making it blue, I'm going to make it yellow. So we're getting there. I kind of like that. And now I'm going to add another exposure brush, and we're going to make these columns over here a little bit darker. So this is only needs a little bit of exposure and make those darker was a negative number. There we go. Some darker here. And accept that. So this is before, and that's where we are now. So now it's a little more, it's getting there. It's getting moodier. And then maybe I'm going to brighten up these windows a little bit over here on the bottom. And then what I would do is, not that, I would go back to my selective. I'm going to choose the color of that window. Here's my area of influence. I'm going to make that brighter, add some contrast, and maybe add some saturation because there's a little bit of color in there. I can make it that stained glass really glow. I'm going to copy that setting, move over to the other window, paste that there, adjust that area of influence, and we're going to tap and paste there too. Adjust that area of influence only to that window, and then we'll look at these windows up here. Tap, paste, and adjust those area of influence here. A little better. Before and after. So one thing drives me crazy. I don't like that light that's over here. So really all I'm going to do is I can go to perspective, and I don't want to lose any pixels. So what I'm going to do is I can take it and drag those out of the frame. They're gone. Just like that. And I'm going to center it up a little bit. And if I want to add a little bit more to the top, I could drag down and let some artificial intelligence try to add it, but it's adding windows and I don't like that. So we're going to leave it exactly like that. And I can pull this down a little bit to even that out, make it a little straighter, just like that. And then this edge, make that a little straighter and accept that. So before and after. Again, before and after. So if I want to change anything, like this light looks a little too bright, I can go back here to my edits, and I did a brush somewhere. I forgot where it was. It was this one. We're going to redo that brush on the exposure brush. Here we go. Take that down a little bit and put all the other stuff back. So basically with Snapseed, you work in I didn't lower it enough. You can work in layers and go back and re-edit something that you edited earlier. So with that meaning, if you're doing a brush and a brush, or doing a selective tool, it was this one actually. So was that selective tool. And there it is. Highlight it, make sure it's blue. I'm gonna enlarge it before, highlight it and lower that just a little bit. It was a little too bright. There, now I turn that light down, put all my perspective adjustments back, go back, and there that looks a whole lot better. It's not as bright. So essentially, you can make changes after the fact and go back and re-edit one of the earlier steps that you had, which is kind of like what, if you ever use Photoshop, that's a feature within Photoshop. You can go back to that layer and re-edit the layer. That's a nice little feature about Snapseed. And that is a really quick and easy demonstration of just making a picture from kind of boring to a little bit more magical. Again, it's what you see. It's not what you, or it's what you feel. It's not exactly what you say. Any questions?
Michael,
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of tutorials in Snapseed, so if people want to learn how to do some special processing in that app, there are tutorials you can also read.
Yep. They're right here. So how you find that is within Snapseed, tap the three little dots at the top right of the screen, tap the word tutorials, and it opens up tutorials, and I give you a little, you can see they're short, 1 minute, 5 minutes, how to do different things. There's a lot of tutorials, but they're only a minute or so, and so it's really kind of nice how they do that for you. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there, adults in their parents' basement that are doing these type of things. But it's fun.
Michael, how often does Snapseed upgrade their application?
Thankfully, not very often, because whenever they do, it seems to break something and then they have to fix it. So not very often. I would say once a year, maybe once every 9 months. And again, Google owns it, and I'm really happy that they're not doing things to it because it works.
But if my Snapseed is, say, 3 or 4 years old, I ought to upgrade it, huh? Or update it.
If you have an iPhone, it probably updates for you automatically, and you just don't even know it.
Okay.
So I wouldn't even, I don't even know if there's a set, if it tells you which version you're on. It doesn't, that I can see. So no, I wouldn't even worry about it. I would just just go to the App Store and make sure you have just make sure it's the latest version. But again,
everything that works on your iPhone would also work on an iPad if you're fortunate enough to have both.
that is correct. And there is no desktop version of Snapseed.
But if you're using it on an iPad, which has a pencil, that just makes some of the things you're doing with your finger a little more accurate, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and that's that's the thing. When I use everything with I do have an iPad, but I do use my phone for all the editing. And when I am getting close to something, that is one of the things I just zoom in tighter to it and then use my finger in that regard. So you can get pretty tight when you're looking at details. And again, so if you look at this picture, remember, this is an iPhone. I was taken with an iPhone. This is the before picture. This is the after, no matter what. But if I zoom in really tight, remember, this is just an iPhone, and look at the detail that's available to you using just an iPhone. Like, you don't need that big black camera anymore in order to get capture detail, and it was low light. I mean, the interior of this building was low light. I'm getting detail in the background on the stained glass. I'm getting detail in the foreground on lights, and then whatever else is going on in the columns and things like that. So I can't stress enough that the best camera you have is the one with you, and it may just be sitting in your pocket, and you just need to take it out and use it. And then you can do things with it with either Snapseed or Lightroom or whatever else you want to do. So I'm going to stop. No, I'm going to change my sharing. So any last questions? One last thing I just want to show you is you can go to my website. I teach a lot of classes again. Pat, you mentioned Capital Photography Center, Montgomery College. And this is an iPhone presentation. So you're welcome to scan the QR code, take you to my website. That's where all my classes are listed. And of course, it's in the recording if you want to wait till later. And that's it. That's all I got.
Michael, could you tell us a little bit about your Montgomery College class? I know that you've moved quickly here because we only had a defined amount of time. Tell us about your class.
So that's a tricky one. So I'm teaching one right now. We're in session right now. And I don't have one scheduled right now for spring. So we're waiting to see when the next class schedule is coming around for that. So the class is when it comes back on it's an online class only. And it's 8 hours of instruction. So it's 4 2-hour sessions once a week in the evening, online, Zoom. And it's a great little class. It's good. And we're running one right now. Right now, there are 0 photography programs at the Montgomery College Lifelong Learning Institute in the spring. So I don't know why. It's not just me. No photography programs are in the catalog right now. So you either change their mind or they'll run it in the summer. But then the other classes I teach, if you prefer live, is I do teach live iPhone classes. Android folks are welcome to attend, but you have to understand that we're going to be talking more iPhone stuff. I teach that live for Capital Photography Center. We meet at the National Gallery of Art. It's a 4-hour class, 1 4-hour class. We go from 10:30 to 2:30, and it's a deep dive into iPhone photography. We walk around the museum, we take pictures, we come back, we edit, we produce art because we're in an art museum. And it's a great class. So go to capitalphotographycenter.com and you can register for that class.
And you do that multiple times a year?
Yeah, I do that once a month, basically.
Once a month.
Yeah. And the classes, they virtually everyone always sells out. So, if you see it and it fits your schedule and you want to take it, don't wait, sign up.
There's one unanswered question in the chat. One of the members wants to know, what is HEIC versus a JPEG?
Oh, I knew it. Somebody had to go ask that question. Was that you, Lisa?
I'm trying to look it up, but I thought maybe you should answer.
No, so HEIC is Apple's proprietary format, but it's not a raw format. So it's a very, very compressed file that takes your pictures. And normally, if you think of a file size, and I think we all understand file sizes, if you're sending an email, a normal regular file size of most pictures is like 2 to 3 megabytes. An HEIC file, Apple proprietary, is much, much, much smaller, like not even a megabyte. And the JPEG is kind of like the industry standard, and everybody can open a JPEG. An HEIC is required to have an Apple device to open it, unless you have a piece of software on your PC computer that can read that HEIC file. But the advantage is it's a little bit smaller. The disadvantage is, what I have found in my experience is it does not hold up in resolution as well as a JPEG image. So the color is not as vibrant and it's a little chunkier as the file because it's very, very compressed. So I personally shoot everything in JPEG. I don't use the HEIC, and I don't use RAW because I just don't need to. It's too big a file. It's not necessary. And all RAW files, meaning RAW is just a data dump from the phone, has to be processed. Every photograph with it needed. So it'd be like sending somebody your undeveloped roll of film and say, "Here are my vacation pictures." That's what a RAW file is. So unless they had the dark room and they had the computer that can read the RAW file, then you're just wasting everybody's time.
Thank you.
Good question.
And they've got a
Anything?
lot of apps for things. Have they created an app that will remove glare from, like, if someone takes a picture of their watercolor and wants to enter it in a show, it has a lot of glare. Is there something that will remove that?
Nope.
Okay, no, just hoping.
Nope. Not yet. I mean, I'm sure AI can probably figure it out by now, and I do not use any of the AI features that are in Photoshop or Lightroom or anything like that. And so I'm sure AI can do it, but I can't.
All right.
And I don't know of an app that can do it other than say an AI app that can do it. The trick is don't photograph the glare.
That's right. But we'll see people pictures.
Remove the glass.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Michael, any comments on printing your photos? I don't know if you actually print and frame and display your photos, or if you do everything, on the screen.
That's good. I do print, but what I do print is I don't print single photographs. I print PDFs. In other words, I make PDF books I do projects, and I create a book, and then I send that book off to Blurb, and then I get a book in the mail, and I actually have a physical book of my photographs, and I like doing those prints as a book rather than just single photographs hanging on the wall. Number one, wall space is always difficult. There's inertia where you don't change your pictures around very often, so you end up looking at the same pictures all the time. So if you have books, it's nice to pull it off the bookshelf, page through the books, reminisce. You have good stories. You share that experience with somebody else, and it's always fun
Michael,
to do.
do you have a preference for which printer you use, or MPix or Nation's Photo? Where do you go?
Yeah, I use Blurb. So when I make books, I use Blurb as the book making because it's easy. It's built into Lightroom, but
Thank you.
even before I had it with Lightroom, I was using Blurb and do a really good job.
How do you spell that? Blurb?
BLURB.
Oh, okay. Okay. Blurb.
So, but for single photographs, like if I was in a show, for example, for the Maryland Photography Alliance or something like that, I usually use Nation's Photo Lab, and I'll print my pictures on. I like to print them on aluminum rather than say just paper, and then it's more substantial. And then you can make iPhone photographs, smartphone photographs easily up to 11 by 14 or a little bit larger than that. So 16 by 20 would be the max size. You can easily print without a lot of cropping, of course. So if you're going to crop down to just like a little piece of your picture, then that affects your print size.
Another question also, Michael. I tried to email me a photo and it wouldn't attach because the file was too large, perhaps.
Yeah.
How can I resize a photo in my iPhone? Is it possible to resize it?
So you don't do it in the iPhone, you do it in the email application.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So the application will bug you and say, what size do you want to send this? And it'll say small, medium, large. Just choose a
Right.
smaller size.
But then you can't expand it out again. You've lost something when you've done that, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the hazards of digital transmission of photographs. That's the way life is.
But you lose less if you have actual size as the option, right?
Sure. And if you're sending it online to a printer, you're going to send the full file size. They have the technology is set up that you're not going to have to email somebody Like you're not going to email Nation's Photo. You're not going to email your PDF book to Blurb for them to print. There's a connection where you're sending the full file size. So like, for example, if I have a 50-page book of photographs, that could very, very easily be 30 megabytes in size. So you can't email something that large usually. So you would have to, Blurb can handle it. It's a pipeline.
It's part of their service. They
Exactly. Yep.
look at all the details of your photo and grab it, and you're not using an email server to get it to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, they have a proprietary connection to you. You establish that connection and send it to them. And I really recommend, like, even if you print a yearly, sometimes it's nice to just assemble all of your pictures on a quarterly, half year, or yearly basis and say, here are my best pictures, and put it in a yearbook, for example. And then this is what we did. But every time I take a trip somewhere, I'll produce a book. Or if there's a project I'm working on, just try to remain creative, or through a camera club or through something like that, a little project. And it doesn't have to be very large. It could be 10 pages, it could be less, it could be 6 pictures, but it's fun to just have it printed as a book. And it's not a hardback, it's just like a soft cover, a little, it's called a trade book is what it is. 6 by 9 inches trade book, and only $10. You can get like 50 pictures in for $10.
And the other application you were using allows you to categorize, your trip, for example, so you can always find it digitally through, I guess it was a Photoshop app or something.
Yeah, no, it's Lightroom is the one to use for that, to categorize all your pictures. And that's a whole different class, and I'm happy to talk about that if you want. But yeah, that's a whole different topic of how to categorize and archive your pictures.
That's another time when we have to invite you back, right?
Yep.
And
So it's easier than paintings, because paintings, you have closets full of easels and frames and canvases and stuff like that.
Hi, honey.
Sure.
This is a
Any other questions?
presentation on photography with iPhone.
Teresa, do you have a question? Okay. I guess she didn't.
No, that's good.
Oh
Anyone
my,
else have a question? Feel free to ask. And we have San Diego telling us that her favorite tool is Snapseed. And because years ago you did a really nice workshop for us where we all took a picture of a pumpkin and we all together did different things with it using Snapseed, and it was great fun.
we were in person, right?
Yes, we were. We were at Artists and Makers too when we had to meet there because the man.
Oh my goodness, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
You took the garden photography class, and I remember you doing the flowers and making amazing stuff out of the flowers we had.
I still have it framed. It's like, okay. Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for
My pleasure.
spending so much time with us and whetting our appetite. I mean, you move quickly. It makes us want to know more. It's great to know that Snapseed has those tutorials. And thank you again for joining us. By the way, do you ever judge art shows? Did I put you on the spot here? No.
No, I don't.
We
I
know
don't think-
some
I'm
art
not
organizations, exclude photos, which I think is silly because when, you're talking about the creative part of it, you're still talking about telling a story and a composition and getting the light right, and blah, blah, blah. All the same things that a painter has top of mind. It's just you're using a different tool.
Sure. An image is an image. And, when anybody go into a museum or an art gallery, you look at what's on the wall and you run your own little critique all the time. If I like this, I don't like this, or I would do this different, or I wish whatever. But I'm not really qualified to run it as a judge of an art show.
Well, we're always looking for them. Anyway, thank you again for
Thank
spending
you.
time with us. This has been great.
Thank you.
And we need to get you back here again soon, not as a judge, but maybe talking about how you can
Okay.
organize your photos better.
Hey, anytime, willing to. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
joining us.
much.
All right. Thank you, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.